Hello guys, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to use Flexbox. First I will show you a few slides, then I'm going to explain all of properties step by step. At the end I will provide a few examples and then maybe later I will update more examples. Let's get started. Firstly, we have to ask ourselves why we need Flexbox. There are so many reasons, but we are going to keep it simple. The main idea is to know why we need to use it. So without Flexbox, it's really hard to maintain your layouts, max bundles, and etc. Again, without Flexbox, you will have to constantly use the properties such as float, positional properties, and other tricks to able to accomplish even simple tasks. And when your application grows, it's really going to be hard to maintain all of these things. But with Flexbox, it removes all of these problems. And it's really easy to accomplish almost anything that you want. You can do 2D stuff, but it's not recommended because there is also grid layout. So just because grid exists, that doesn't mean that you don't have to learn Flexbox. You really have to learn both of them. So it's really powerful and keep things easy. So basically, if you want to build something, you must learn Flexbox. So how do we activate it? Well, imagine there is a HTML simple like this. If you do display flex on this div class wrapped, each of these are going to be flex item and this one is going to be flex container. So basically this one is flex container, these three are flex items. I just explained in here. We can also use the nested way. Imagine that there are two divs. When you do display flex, the descendant element will be flex item, which is small wrapper is going to be flex item. Remember, when you apply only display on the flex for the big wrapper, in this case, only the small wrapper is going to be flex item. These three are not going to affect, but as soon as you do display flex on the small wrapper also, and then these three are going to be flex items because you apply display flex on the small wrapper. And now small wrapper is flex container, also it's flex item. I explained these things in here and you can do the nested as much as you want. So basically you can do 20 times, 30 times, whatever you want. The key point is that you have to understand what is flex container and what is flex item, because it's going to be different properties that you can apply to these things. Let's move. When it's come to flex, you really have to know what is these things. Main axis and cross axis, and these are the default behavior and they can change. This is important. They are not fixed and it's going to be changed with the flex direction property. We will come there. Also, the other main thing that you have to know, some properties will only work on main axis and some only work with cross axis. Flex wrap usually get confused with the flex direction, but they are different. So flex wrap will not swap the axes. Means it cannot do like swap them. Alright? I will explain them in detail. Let's move. Imagine this is the flex container and it has a bunch of different flex items inside. As I mentioned, the main axis is from left to right and the cross axis is going to be top to bottom. That's all the really important. These are just for information. Cross start, cross end, and cross size it calls from top to bottom, cross size, and from here to here, from main start to main end, it's called main size. If you don't understand these things, don't worry, you will get it. It's important for us to see these things now. These are the properties that you can apply on the Flex container, like display, justify content, align items, align content, and all of these things. And these things are just shorthand. Means you can do gap, let's say 10 pixel and 10 pixel. And I believe it was like row and column. And this one is shorthand for this two, which means the direction, flex direction, and then flex wrap. These are that you can apply on the flex item. Flex growth, shrink, and basis, and flex. This is the shorthand for these three. So flex growth first, and then shrink, and then basis. And also order and align self. Remember, these are the overviews so that you can see the big picture. This is also important to have in your mind. You can only apply justify content to main axis. So whenever you use justify content, you have to ask yourself, where is my main axis? Because remember, it can change. And same for cross axis. Whenever you apply this tree, you have to ask yourself, where is my cross axis? Let's move. Let's see what we have in the code. We have a parent wrapper and child wrapper. And that child wrapper has these divs inside. They have these class names. Remember, they are only class names. At the moment, they are not flex item or they are not flex container. Inside the styles, we have background colors. All you need to pay attention is this one, which has border and height, and it's fixed height. This is important because the shape of your layout can change easily if you change this to something dynamic. If I say and save, you see that it changed. Remember, this is our parent wrapper. We gave this to flex. It's going to make immediate child elements to flex item. So currently it's only this one. So this one is flex item now, this one is flex container. And if you see in here, you can click here, you can inspect it. Also, when you click here, you can see that layout tab changed. It says we have flex container, which is this one, and we have flex item, which is child one. Just because this is the flex item and it has these things inside, it will try to take all of this inside. And since we didn't define any height, weight on these items explicitly, it's only going to take as much space as they take. If I come here, if I change this one, let's say, if I do this and save, you see that it's going to overflow. Also, if I do width to like that, it's going to be like this because this is the only flex item and these are the thing that inside it. Now I will remove these things. I will change this one to child. Means this one is going to be flex container and these are going to be flex items. If I save, actually let's do like this. Right now, this is where we begin. And if I enable and save, it's going to be like this. Let's move this one to right side so that we can see how it behaves. Remember, we set main axis from left to right, cross is top to bottom. So the default behavior, each item will try to lay out based on main axis. You might say, okay, I got it, but what is this mess? Why they are like this? We will come there, don't worry. Just because we didn't define explicit height on them, the default behavior flex item is going to behave like this. If I say all the flex item height is like this, save, you can see that it's changed now. So the main takeaway that child wrapper is flex container and all of the immediate child are going to be flex items. And main axis from left to right, just because it's from left to right, each item is going to lay out from left to right, like this. And they will take as much as space the inside have. If I change one of this, like, let's say, just save this to 3 and save, you see that it's take like this. There is also something called inline flex. If I do this and save this, you see that flex container boundary will be like this. Means it's going to be like this. If I change the height also, it's going to be like this because we have height on the flex items. If I also remove this one, it's only going to take the space that it's necessary for it. Remember, if I now do this to flex and save, it's going to treat like the black element. Let's move. Let's talk about wrap. I changed the code like this again, and now I will apply the width to each item. Let's say like this, and I save. Now it seems like something didn't change at all, right? They just grow, and that's all. But if I change like this, and I saved and even refresh, you see that seems nothing changed. What if I do this? They just shrink, right? And that's all. Well, currently we say, hey, flex item should be like this, but it seems like it doesn't obey our rule. If I do flex wrap and wrap, also the no wrap is default and there is wrap and wrap reverse. If I save, now seems like it works, right? Now if we inspect any item, you see that we have exact width that we gave. It's going to from left to right, and when it doesn't fit, it's going to wrap to the bottom. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there is a gap, notice. Because this element clearly doesn't fit in here, right? What if I do this? Well, you see, as soon as it doesn't fit, it's also moving that to the bottom. And then it's overflowing our flex container. Let's do this something like this and save. You see that how it's behave. If I do wrap reserve and save, notice how it behaves. It's flex item 1, 2, 3. Again, it start from 1 and it start from left side. This is important. And then when it doesn't fit, it's move 1 up, not down, and it moves to 7, 8 from left to right again. Now it doesn't fit and it's overflow. And you can't use scroll in this case. Let's move. Flex direction. This is one of the most important one. As I said before, you always have to mindset. Where is my main axis? Where is my cross axis? Because these are changed when you use flex direction. And the default is row. So the default from left to right and top to bottom. If you do row reverse, it's going to reverse to main axis. Like that. Remember, you can only use one of this. You can't stack like do row reverse and do column and you just mess everything. No, it's not like that. You just have to use one of these. So let's assume we use flex direction column. What this means, the main axis is going to be from top to bottom. Remember, flex items are going to follow the main axis. And the flex direction is from left to right. Notice that they are swapped. And this is why it's really important to understand what's going to happen with this. And this diagram shows you everything. So whenever you messed with the layout and you have no idea what's really happened, ask yourself, where is my main axis? Where is my cross axis? Let's see in the code. Please take the picture if you need. Now this is our layout and I want to apply the flex direction, and remember it's going to apply to flex container. We will do flex direction, let's say row reverse, and save. Notice that flex item 1 came to here. It was in here, right? But now it's in here because our main axis from right to left right now. And our flex items are going to lay out based on main axis. And since this is our first flex item and this is the second, it's going to follow like this. Let's remove this again to not bring confusion. Notice this is from left to right. And I will enable and I will do column. What does column do? It does main axis from top to bottom, right? Let's save. You see how it's changed? It's changed so different. Like they extend. We will come about these things soon. But the main thing that you have to pay attention that the main axis from top to bottom, and this is why it's going to be from top to bottom. If I even do like this with, let's say, 300 pixel and save, it's not going to be something like 1, 2, 3 or whatever. It's not wrap. This is direction. If I do height to each of this 300 pixel, save, notice that doesn't change, like nothing changed, right? What if I do minimum weight and save? You see that it changed, right? It changed because we changed to minimum height and we have 300 pixel in here. And it's going to fit as much as it needs. If I change to 200 pixel save, it's going to be like that. You can see the black border. It exists. This is our container, flex container. What about I change to column reverse? Also remember these values are in here. If you save, remember column reverse the main axis from bottom to top. Let's remove these things. to make things easy, since our main axis from bottom to top, it's going to lay out based on main axis. And this is why it's going to be like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I change this to 500, save, and then like that, maybe more, what do you think it's going to happen? I'm saving and I'm refreshing, nothing happened. Like, I mean, something happened, but remember, it's not wrap. Don't confuse with the wrap. This doesn't work because of flex shrink is 1. Means each item are going to shrink. We will come there. But this is the reason why it's not overflowing. Like I said, this is extremely important and you will use all of these constantly. Let's move. I want to quickly mention about flex flow shorthand. As you can see, it represents flex direction and flex wrap. So basically, if you have flex direction column, let's say, you can do column and the other one no wrap, which is default. If I save, this is the shorthand how you can use both of these together. If I do column reverse, it's also going to work. See? Let's move. Justify content. By the way, I just decreased the flex item amount so that we can understand better. You can really open any article and you are going to see how it visually looks like. Justify content only will work on the main axis, means it's not going to affect the cross axis, and you're using on the flex container. If I do center, which is the easiest one, it's going to center all of your flex items to the center. The default is flex start, save. Notice it was like that. And what is our main axis from left to right? And there's also a flex and it's like that. Also notice that its flex item start from here, right? It's not from here. It's not like 1, 2, 3. It's not changing the direction. Remember, you can only change the direction with the flex direction. Also, we have space between and save. These are equal these empty spaces. We have space around and save. Remember, this is around, right? And the around each of item, let's say this is item 1, the around them will be equal. So this is x, and this flex item 2 is x, and this is x. So this is 2x, and this is 1x. So this space is going to be 2 times bigger than this one. And this is why the around came. This is why they call it around. So around each item is going to be equal. X, 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 like that, and X, X, and so on. So this is why this one 2x, this one 1x. Lastly, we have space evenly, and if we save, now all of these spaces are equal, means this is x, 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 and x. Let's move. I disable the hide and let's refresh. See, this is how it looks like. And what about the align items? If I save like that, you see that nothing's happened, right? What it does, you remember in slide, this is going to be related with the cross axis. So what is our cross axis right now? It's from top to bottom, right? In default. So this is our container, and from top to bottom, well, you can see there is no space, right? From top to bottom there is no space, but from left to right there is space. So if I do justify content to center, since this is going to responsible with the main axis, if I save, it's going to move, right? Let's remove this and back and enable this one. Ah, shit. Like that, okay? Now you can see we have space. And if I save this, you see that it's center itself. And there is also flex, and I think these are really easy to understand, that, but the main thing is that these are responsible for the cross axis. Let's comment this one and save, and then also I want to comment this one. Let's save. You see that it's kind of stretched. This is because the align items by default is stretched. If I save, you will see that is nothing going to change. This is our cross axis, and the align items, if there is no height, it's going to stretch all the down the whatever container height is. So if I change this one to 4000, save, you see it's going to change. Or like this, it's going to change to down. You got the point. Now I like to talk about baseline. I changed a few things in here. I changed the font size and the height of some of them, like this too. And notice how they lay out. Notice these two are stretched, but this two, notice they have these values. If I do this and save, you see that everything's kind of changed, and baseline thing, the bottom of this, they have line and they all on the that line, like that. Now if you inspect to this items, notice that the height didn't change, but they kind of moved, right? Because it wasn't like that. It was upper, and then when we apply this one, it moves down because that line. And this is how baseline work. Let's talk about align content. This is similar to justify content, but it's going to work on cross axis, not main axis. So this one, also this one, relate with the cross axis. Right now our items like that, and remember if I do this, it's going to be like that. And let's change this to 300. It's going to fit in it. Now if I do wrap and save, now you see that it's wrapped. But why these spaces are there? Remember we said the height is 100 pixel, right? So now it's 100 pixel, but why we have like that? And this is our container. Well, it's because if you remember that the align item, if I enable it, default is stretch, right? I save, well, nothing changed. Why? Because we have height. If I disable this one, even disable this one, and save, since this is the default, even if you don't type, it will be exist. and you didn't specify anything, it's not going to override anything. So this is why it's going to stretch like that. And if you inspect, you see it's 350 because our height of the container is 700. Okay, I enable it again and I want to do flex start. Now remember, the flex start is going to behave like that. And the height is going to be whatever content is. If I go and change, let's say, the content of this, maybe more, something crazy, it's also going to affect here. But let's undo, save, come back. Now if I again enable this one, it's going to respect whatever we define here. Even if I say stretch and save, it's not going to work because we specified our height. And this is why these spaces exist. Now, if I do this one, let's say flex start, it's going to behave like this because this is going to be related with the cross axis, and our cross axis is from top to bottom. Just like justify content, when you do flex start, it does what? It moves to main start, right? From left to right, and the main start from the left side. And same thing happening here. Our cross from top to bottom, and it moves things to the top. And this is why it's like that. If I do flex and save, you see it's going to be like that. Notice that flex item is still in here. It's going to be like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. Let's do this 100 and save. And then also do the center, save. Now you see that it moves the center. Remember, we did the wrap. Just because we wrapped, we had multiple lines. And this is why align content is going to work. If you don't have multiple lines, this is not going to work because it cannot center one line, right? Or it cannot do flex start or space between. But right now we have 2 lines, so it works. If I do space between, save, you see it's going to be like that. If I do like that, since we have 3 lines right now, the space between is going to be like this. If I do, let's put this maybe 50 or something to see things more clear. Let's see space around. Now this is 1x, and from here to here, let's say x, and from here to here also x. So this is 2x, and this is 1x. This is 2x, this is 1x. If I do evenly, save, and these are equal to each other, just like justify content. If I do this, you see it's going to work. Okay, now we said if we have multiple lines. What if I do something like that? I comment these things and I want to apply flex direction to column. Now, as soon as I do this, my cross axis and main axis will swap. So right now, my main axis is going to be top to bottom, and my cross axis is going to be left to right. So align items, align content should work from left to right. So I will save, Just because of this, it's moved like that. And just because we have width with the 300 pixel, it's going to be like that. If I do this, it's going to stretch. Why? Because of this one by default. If I enable this, you see nothing changed because this is going to work for the cross axis. And our cross axis is from left to right at the moment. If I do flex, start and save, you see it's only going to take the content that it needs. Or if I say flex and save, it's going to move things to here because this is our cross axis. Now I do this, say this, and I enable this again. Now we said the flex direction is column, and I want to do this like maybe center. Save. Well, nothing changed. What about flex and save? Nothing changed. Remember, this is main axis. This is main axis. This is cross axis. Right now on the cross axis, it's like we only have one line on the cross axis, and it's this one. Think in Excel when you only have one column and you want to play with that. It's not going to be possible, right? And we are on the cross axis. And this is why this will not work. If I do flex, wrap, and wrap, save. Let's first do this. Now it seems like flex wrap doesn't work. If I change height to, let's say 200 maybe, and save, now you can see 1, 2, 3, and 4 didn't fit in here. Since it didn't fit, it's going to wrap to the next column, because right now main axis from top to bottom, cross axis from left to right. So just because it's from left to right, the wrap is going to add to next column to the cross axis. And this is why we have this flow. And remember, this spaces because of what? Because of this we have. If we do this, you see it's going to fill it. And it's because align items are stretched by default. If you want to do this, flex, start, enter, it's going to take the content it needs. Let's do this. Actually, let's do this. Now I want to apply this one. Let's do this. If I do flex, start, and save, you see that they push to start, and 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, because from left to right it's cross axis. Since we saying that it should go flex start, it's going to push things to the start, which is left side. If I do flex and save, it's going to push things down. And center, space between. You got the idea. Let's move. Let's talk about gap. Now I disabled this one, and we still have this one, and we have wrap. I saved. I do this. You see it wrapped since it wrapped, our box container will grow because we didn't specify any height. It will take as much space it needs. Now if I do row gap and 20 pixel, it will put 20 pixel gap between these two. If you enable the highlight, you can see that the gap lines are different than the free spaces. Now I will disable. Let's see the column gap, let's say 30 pixel and save. Again, if I enable again, you can see that there is a gap between rows and columns. The column lines are the equal with this one. I really don't know how the lines work, but this is how it is. Also, the beauty of this setting, let's assume that you want to make the gap between 2 or 3 things. If you do with the CSS normally, what you have to do, let's say you do margin, right? But you shouldn't include the last item. So you have to later on remove the last margin that you will get by default if you do this, or you do CSS not select the last child, whatever, things like that. But with the gap, it's always going to do these things for you behind the scene. So it's more flexible. You see that there is no gap on the last item. There is only gap between, and same for the columns. This is not the gap. This is the free space that we have. These are the gaps. Also, if you want to do gap, this is shorthand. Let's say 5 pixel for the row, 20 pixel for the column. So command this to save. You see that we applied them. Let's move. So how grow and shrink works. Our CSS like this. I will save. We just have height. There is no width. Now I want to enable this one so that we can see these numbers. To explain better, flex grow by default is 0. And remember, it's the flex item property. You cannot do this on the flex container. So this is default. If I save, you see that nothing changed. What it says, if there is a free space, don't use it. Just leave it as it is. But if you give one, you order to these items, hey, if there is a free space, which is right now it is in the container, if this is our container, this is our free space in the container, if there is a free space, go use it. So when I say flex grow 1 and save, it will use this. But how it works, right? This has really confused me when I first learned Flexbox. And to understand these things are also really important. I will back to the 0. I will save it again. Now, let's check. Right now you see that the width is 147.5, and this is also the same. I want to show you something. And there is also the free space. Let's bring this free space something like this. Now I want you to think about this one. Imagine that our free space in the container is 200 pixel, and these are our 2 items. When I order to flex grow to these 2 items, imagine that it's going to use X, and this is also will use the X ratio, X value of this one. So basically we have 2x and it's 200 pixel, and the 1x is going to be 100. So our item will grow whatever current value it has plus x. And this is same. This is why they equally will grow, will take this space, just like our example. Let's see. Our width is like this. Let's change to something fixed so that we can see better or understand. I changed this to 200 pixel and save. Then I changed this one to 600 to 10 because of the borders we have. I want to demonstrate you how it's going to grow. So we check it's 200, this also 200, and entire box is this one. Now I will give it to 1 and I will save. It's going to be 300. You see? Now let's give them different so to understand better. If I do flex item 1, I'm saying item 1 will grow 1x and item 2 will grow 2x. And before I want to disable everything and save, now this is the initial phase, right? You can see in here, I want to do this x, this 3x. So in total we have 4x because we will distribute this free space on them, on this x, because these are the grow values that we are thinking that we will give them. So 4x is going to be 200 and x is going to be 50, and this is going to be current width of the flex item, which is 200 plus x, which is 50, 250, and this one. So they will grow like that. Let's see. Now I will enable this one, I will enable this one, and I will save. Let's inspect. I forgot this one. And also I made another mistake. This is why it didn't work. But right now, if you see that we have the same number that we talked, right? And this is how it actually worked behind the scene. You can give this 4 or 5 or 6 if save. It's going to take more free space that it has, because this is 6x, this is 1x, and 7x equal 200. You got the point. This is how it works. If I disable this one and enable this one, remember, since we says flex item 2 is not going to use any free space, and all the free space are going to be flex 1 item, and flex 1 item was 200 initially, and we have 200 free space. This is why it became 400. Let's move to flex shrink. It's also same, but the opposite. Let's talk about flex shrink. This is the opposite of the flex growth. Remember, with flex growth, we consider to use the free space. And with shrink, where there is no free space, how these items are going to act. So I do this. Watch the value. We have 200, 200 is 400. And we have border here, 410, right? If I do 410 and save, by default it's 1, by the way, if I didn't mention. If I save, if I try to do this, you see that they shrink, right? They shrink because if I again go to this, notice that right now there is no scroll bar, right? You can't see scroll bar because they're shrinking. If I go again this value and I do, hey, I don't want to shrink, okay? I'm not going to shrink. So I came here and I start to move down. See, the scroll bar appears because we don't allow them to shrink, and this is why we got the scroll bar, because we didn't allow to shrink. Now back to 1, we will apply to be shrink, and now we will understand how it's going to take the value. We do this again. Now imagine we have our 2 items and this is our container, and imagine that we want to shrink our container 200 pixel to back. So in this situation, let's assume that we gave them to x and x. In this case, the 2x is going to be 200 because we shrink 200 pixel, imagine, and x is going to be 100, and this is why it's going to be current minus 100, current with minus 100. So back to our example. Now this is 410, and if I go 200 to back, it's going to be this value, 210. Now since I set this to 1, this is exactly mean like this. They are same because we're selecting the flex item, we're selecting the both of them. You can just do this, it really doesn't matter. If we save, you see that it didn't change. Let's inspect. You see that it was 200, right? Now it's 100. And this is also 100. And this is how shrink works. Now imagine that again we are like this. Let's talk about this example. Again, imagine this is our container and we will shrink to 100 pixel and we will give the ratio x and 3x means 1 and 3, and the calculation should be like this, right? X is going to be 50, since this is 200 minus 50, this should be 150, and this should be 50, right? Let's see. I change this one 1 and this one 3 and save. Notice this is 401 and this is 200, this is 200, everything is okay. So let's change this to like this. Let's inspect. We said this should be 150, but it's not. And this we said it should be 50, but it's not. What's happening? Well, it's not because if you go shrink, this item cannot shrink anymore until this value that you can see, 58 point whatever. And just because it doesn't fit, it cannot take any longer value. It cannot shrink this container anymore. It's going to shrink this one more, because this is why we ordered 210. And when we start to move more, like 210, this is why we get these values. This is why this item is not 150 but 141 or whatever, because if you do this plus 8 point whatever, it's going to be what? It's going to be 150. So our calculation really works. It is how it works. If I come here and change this flex item to 2 instead, let's remove this one and save, right? And start from scratch. Now everything is like that, and if I do like this, save, well, it still didn't work. I believe this is also doesn't work. We should do maybe more. Let's just do 1, 2 and save and do the same address. Now I do like that and save. Okay, now it works. You see that it can shrink this item and it became 50 and this is 150. This is how it works. Now, even if I do 4, it's going to also work because it can shrink this one. This is how things work, and it's really important to understand this concept. Let's move. What is flex basis? Its default size of an element before it uses the free space. In this case, we don't have any, and by default, flex basis is auto. And this means the element will be whatever content is. This is why the flex 1 is like this and 2 is like this. So when flex basis is auto, if there is an width or height, it will take them. For this case, we will look the width. If I give the width, the flex basis will understand it and it will take this value. Again, its default size before using the free space. Now, if I give this to 1 and 3, since we know how these things work, if I save, you see that the values are that we expect. If I change this to flex basis and save, you see that it didn't change, right? What if I give this min width? And before that, I want to do this and save. Now you can see that it's both 200, right? And I want to do just same that we did. When I save, you see that these values are not what we expect. Something weird happened here and I couldn't really figure out for now. It's like 7 pixels from here moves to here, since this is 257, let's say. But I would like to show you differences between min width and flex basis soon. So again, if you really know why this is happening, please let me know in the comment. Maybe it uses these values behind the scene. This is why we have decimal numbers or things like that. But I'm really not sure. Let's move. Now I would like to give the width 600 pixel. Let's do this and save. Because shrink is 1 by default, the content will shrink even though we give it to 600 pixel. And they will be equal. If I give the wrap and save, just because they don't fit, they will wrap. And now they are 600, both of them. When I try to shrink, you see that the container shrink and the items also shrink. The values are changed, right? And same will be happen for the flex spaces. If I save, this is going to be the same. The flex basis also is going to shrink because this is the initial value, you know. As soon as I change this to min width and save, it seems like same, let's shrink. But as you can see, we have overflow. We got the scroll bar. And you see that it overflows from the container because we saying, hey, minimum width is going to be 600 pixel no matter what. This is why it doesn't fit. This is not good. We don't want this behavior. So the main takeaway that use the flex basis for the flex items instead of using width or min width. Let's move. What is flex? Flex is shorthand of these three: flex growth, flex shrink, flex basis. And by default it's flex 0, 1, auto. So if you give the flex growth 0, shrink 1, auto 0, instead of doing this, you can use this shorthand. Remember, before using this flex, you have to really understand these three. Also, you can give the decimal numbers if you like, but you cannot give the negative one. The other usage cases we have, when you give the single value, this means flex growth is 4, it's going to be flex growth, and shrink by default is 1, and then basis is going to be 0%, not auto. If you use one value like this, 300 pixel or 4 RAM, 4M, whatever you want, it will know that you talk about flex basis. So basically this setting will apply to flex basis. If you do 4-1, like both of them unitless, it will take this to growth, this to shrink. And similar to here, this will be flex grow, this will be flex basis. If you want to use the shorthand, this is how it works. Let's move. By default, all the items has order 0. If I do flex item 1, order 1, and save, since everything else is 0 and 1 is bigger than 0, the flex item 1 is going to be the last one. If I apply same thing to do here and save, they are equal, and now it's going to matter which one came first in your HTML. So your HTML is important. Remember, by default they all 0, because they all 0, they will just follow your HTML. But now we say these two are order 1, they will be the last, but this one will be before the flex item 2 because it's before this element. Also, you can do negative and you save. Now flex item 6 became the first one. If you do 7 minus 2 and save, the 7 will be before this one because this is the lowest number. If you do this to 2 and save, this will be before this one because in HTML, remember, this is the first one appears in HTML because your HTML is going to be read from top to bottom. This is how it works. Just another quick note, if you highlight these things, you will see that it's kind of weird or messed up. This is because you changed the order, but remember, this will not affect your actual HTML. This is about DOM. That's why you get this weird behavior. But it's really fine, because I don't think that you will ever have to use something like this. Let's move. The first thing that we have to understand about align self, that it's not align items. We covered that align items by default it's stretched and it applies to flex container, but align self will apply to flex items and they will be related with each other. What I mean by that, if I come here, if I say align items to the flex start, let's say, this means that the flex item 1 will change this behavior. Whatever this behavior you defined, it's going to override it. So again, this is on flex container, this is on flex item, And by default, this is auto, which means it will look to this one. Even if we don't have this two, just because by default this is auto, it's going to look this one, and this one by default it's stretched. It will be stretched for all the items. Now, when I save this, you see that nothing changed. Nothing changed because we have explicitly defined our height for this. If I disable this one and if I save, now you will see, since we don't have any height, it's going to respect this one, which is align item stretched. It will stretch all of the container. And remember, this is about cross-axis. And this is also about cross-axis, which is from top to bottom. But now when I say, hey, item 1 is going to be flex start, it's not going to be stretch. If I save, oh, apologize, this is align self. Sorry for typo. When I save, and by the way, up until now, I was talking about align self, okay? For the items, if I mispronounce or something. So align self is going to be on flex item. Align items are on the container. Since I define this one, it's going to override this value, which is flex start. This is why it's like this. If I do flex end and save, it's going to be in here. And same for the center. Save, it's going to the center. You can do something like this, right? Align self to flex end and save. You see all of them goes bottom, but this one stays here because this will override whatever we specify in here, since it came after it. But let's do this and save. If I change this to flex start and save, you see that it will obey whatever we type, but this one will override this value. And this is why it will stay on the center. Let's do something else. Now we have our items like that. And I like to give the flex basis 400 pixel. I'll do this. It's going to take the free space equally for each items. Now if I do wrap and save, you see that since this is 400 pixel, whenever it doesn't fit, it will move to the next line. If I do this, it's going to be like this. So since this is our boundary, flex boundary, it will try to fit inside and the height will change. And remember, this height is related with this one because it's stretching by default. So when I change this one to the flex start and save, you see that it will not stretch. Okay? But let's say I set item 1 align self, I want this to stretch, so it's going to stretch. If I say flex end, it will move where? It will move here because this is its end, or center. It will move here because it's center of that boundary. Like I said, align self will override this one. Let's see something else. Now when I change this to flex direction to the column, the main axis now from top to bottom, and they lay out based on main axis. And since we don't have any high, it will only take whatever content high is. And the reason that these are like this, they stretching. Remember, by default, align items are stretch. And it will depend the cross axis, right? So cross axis from left to right. And this is why it's stretched like this. If I change this to flex start instead of stretch, if I save, you see it will be like this. If I change to end, it will be like this, or center. If I do on the flex item 2 to stretch, it will stretch. Now I like to give the flex basis to 400 pixel. Before that, let's just remove this one to make things clear. What do you think it's going to happen? Well, if I give, you see it's like this, because now it's treat to hide because we changed the direction, and it will try to fit it. So if you really inspect, you will see that it's not 400 pixel because it tries to fit inside all of them. And now they shrink basically. Shrink is 1 by default. If you give the flex shrink to 0 and save, it's going to overload because you don't give enough space. And now you can see it's 400. I will undo this and I will apply to wrap. Now they wrapped based on column. When I do this by default, it's going to stretch like this, right? Let's undo. Remember, it's like they have gap because the cross axis from left to right, and flex start is going to be whatever content is. This is why we have these gaps. If I do something like this and save, and then I want to item 2 to stretch as saved, it's going to stretch. If I do center, it will move from here to here. Remember, it was flex start. If I comment this, save, you see it's like this. If I do flex end, it will move to the end. This is how things work. What if I remove this one? Remember, the reason that we have this layout because it was 400 pixel and it didn't fit, and we have wrapped open and it creates new columns since the direction is column. But when I change this or undo this, remove this, the content's only going to be like this, small. And this is why it's going to fit, right? Let's see. You see it fits. We don't need any extra column to create. And the flex end for this one is going to be from here to here. And this is why it's really important to understand the concept. Okay guys, this is all for this tutorial. I know that I said I will provide a few examples, but I see that to explain things in detail takes time. I believe we really covered many edge cases, and I believe after watching this tutorial, you will able to make any layout based on Flexbox. There are so many examples out there. You can find them, you can try to apply your knowledge to them. By time, if I see if it's necessary for me to add some examples, I will provide them in the playlist. So if you like this video, don't forget to support. I'll see you next time.